I didn't argue during my performance review. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there and listened as my manager described a version of my year that simply didn't exist. So I did something simple. Something that changed everything. I asked HR to explain it. Let me rewind. I walked into that performance review meeting completely prepared. I had everything printed out. My metrics, summaries of every project I led, and a clear tracker of all my goals. I wasn't expecting a perfect score or a glowing, flawless review. Nobody's perfect. All I wanted was accuracy. Instead, I got something else entirely. My manager kicked things off with, "This year showed some inconsistency." Inconsistency. My mind started racing. I had hit every single deadline. I had successfully led to major, high-impact projects. I had even voluntarily taken on additional responsibilities when the team was short-staffed. How was that inconsistent? So, I calmly asked for clarification. The examples I got back were so vague they were almost meaningless. There were some concerns about collaboration, she said, and we noticed some communication gaps. There were no dates, no specific projects, no concrete examples, just ... impressions, vague feelings. And this is where it gets serious. Performance reviews aren't just a chat. Te abe. Real-world consequences. They directly affect your raises, your chances for promotion, your professional reputation, and all your future opportunities within the company. When vague, unsubstantiated criticism gets into your official file, it becomes permanent documentation, and that permanent documentation can shape the entire trajectory of your career. It follows you. Then came the number. The final rating. It was lower than last year. It was significantly lower than what I expected based on my actual performance, and when I asked what had changed, what had caused this drop, the answer was just as frustrating. It's just based on overall feedback. Overall. A word that means everything and nothing all at once. It was a summary without any detail. Throughout all of this, I made a conscious choice. I didn't get defensive. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone of having a bias or being unfair, even though it felt that way. I just looked my manager in the eye and asked one single, powerful question. Can you please provide specific examples of these issues that are tied to measurable outcomes? Silence. There weren't any. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and opened that folder I had prepared. Inside was my arsenal of truth. I had project timelines, clear performance metrics that showed I was exceeding targets, glowing client feedback emails, and even thank you messages from people in other departments. I had copies of written praise from senior leadership. And the best part, everything was time-stamped. Everything was documented. I sat down and composed a calm, professional email. It said, "I'd like to request some clarification on the criteria that were used in my recent performance review. Some of the feedback I received appears to be inconsistent with the documented outcomes from the past year. Would it be possible for us to review the evaluation framework together?" Notice what I did there. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a complaint. It was a simple request for transparency. A request to understand the system. HR's reply came back surprisingly quickly. They scheduled a follow-up meeting. My manager was included on the invite, and from the moment that new meeting began, the entire tone shifted. It was no longer about my manager as impressions. It was about process and evidence. The HR representative started by asking me, "Can you walk us through your concerns?" So I did. One by one, I laid out my evidence. I showed them the metrics that proved I was exceeding targets. I presented the emails that directly contradicted the claim of communication gaps. I shared the written praise I received during the exact same period where I was supposedly being inconsistent. Then, I turned the tables with another simple question. I looked at my manager in HR and asked, "Can you show me where this negative feedback originated? Can I see the documentation for it?" More. Silence. The room was quiet. HR then reviewed all the documentation I provided. They turned to my manager and asked her to clarify her points. The explanations were, once again, general. They weren't measurable. They weren't documented. It was all based on feelings. not facts. And that's when the HR representative said something incredibly important. She stated, "Performance evaluations must be supported by objective, documented examples." That one sentence changed everything. About a week later, I received an updated review in my inbox. The vague, negative language was gone. My final rating was adjusted upward to accurately reflect my work. The fuzzy, subjective comments were completely replaced with measurable, constructive feedback based on the data. There was no apology, but there was a correction. And a correction was what I needed. The impact went far beyond just my own review. From that day forward, things on my team started to change. All feedback for everyone now came with specific examples. Check-ins became more frequent and were properly documented. Expectations were laid out clearly from the start. It wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for the whole team. Because once HR is forced to review the evaluation framework, the framework itself gets stronger and fairer for everyone. My performance review wasn't accurate. It wasn't measurable, and it wasn't fair. But I realized that fighting it emotionally would have gotten me nowhere. Instead, I calmly asked HR to explain it. And when explanations require evidence, the truth usually finds its way to the surface. Sometimes, the most powerful response you can have isn't to defend yourself. It's to ask for the documentation. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content on navigating your career with confidence.